Ola asks, is there a need for a maintenance period after a bulk to make sure that the mass stays on? So this is looking, instead of saying, hey, do I need maintenance phases during cuts? This is after a bulk, do I need a maintenance phase to kind of solidify that new muscle tissue before I can, transition into the next fat loss phase or cut? My answer would be no. This is a common recommendation, and I wouldn't be shocked if I've potentially suggested something along these lines in the past, way back. But after, putting a lot of thought into it, I think this is probably just an illusion that is popular because it's a common and generalizable illusion. So at the end of a bulk, we're often kind of watery and bloated and we're all beefed up. We're usually like pretty overfed. So we're in a position where we are really at an inflated body weight just due to water weight and GI content and things of that nature. And in many cases, our total daily energy expenditure is also a bit inflated as well, just because in the context of overfeeding, sometimes we do have an adaptive process where we upregulate our total daily energy expenditure. So we're in a kind of unique state at the end of a pretty serious bulk where we're pushing the food intake pretty hard. Now, sometimes people will shift straight from that state where they're bulking into a cut. And it'll have a huge drop in calories. There will be a huge initial drop in scale weight. Your carb and sodium intake go down. Maybe glycogen shifts a little bit, drop in water weight, less GI content because you're going from overfeeding to underfeeding. And a lot of people see that initial drop in scale weight and they say, wow, I just lost a tremendous amount of muscle. In reality, that has nothing to do with muscle loss. And muscle loss in that scenario is pretty unlikely if you're putting together your diet effectively. And another thing that kind of contributes to that is a lot of people do have a tendency, myself included back in the day, to overestimate muscularity during a bulk. I remember thinking I was just putting on pure muscle until a roommate was like, dude, you've gained a tremendous amount of fat. And I think someone needed to tell you and no one would.
Yeah.
But
it's an impromptu intervention.
Yeah. I was totally certain that all the weight I was gaining was muscle. And he was like, yeah, it's maybe 15%. So that actually is really common though. Like if you talk to someone who's been bulking and just kind of recreationally bodybuilding and you say, how many pounds do you need to lose before you're going to be shredded? A lot of times they'll say 20 when the number's 40. Like when we bulk, we have a tendency, because, things are going well, the scale's moving, we're getting stronger. Sometimes we have a tendency to overestimate the amount of muscle we're putting on and to underestimate how much fat would need to be lost to get to a particular physique that we have in mind. And so I think that there's a compounding effect there where people, they do that initial abrupt change from a bulk to a cut, body weight drops really quickly, and they think, I think I just lost a lot of muscle. And they decided on the front end, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in this cut. They lose their 20 pounds. They aren't as shredded as they thought they would be. And they say, you know what happened? I lost all that muscle the first couple weeks. That's why I'm not as shredded as I thought I would be, 20 pounds lighter. So I think there are a couple different types of illusions that are kind of contributing to this idea that you need to do maintenance to kind of solidify that muscle before you transition to a cut. But at the end of the day, I cannot think of a single physiological reason that you would have to take that approach. I can't think of a mechanistic explanation of why that would be necessary, but I can think of a couple practical reasons why someone might prefer that. So first of all, like I said, it can be quite a drop when you go from fairly aggressive overfeeding to fairly aggressive underfeeding. And so if you wanted to have kind of a smoother, more predictable transition at the beginning of your cut, just in terms of scale weight, it might make sense to go from overfeeding at the end of your bulk to a little maintenance, let things kind of settle, see exactly where you're at in terms of body weight, and then initiate the cut. You might just get some smoother transitions in terms of scale weight that aren't quite as jarring. And another practical benefit would be, like I said, sometimes with overfeeding during a bulk, we will see that total daily energy expenditure is not just high, but inflated. There's an adaptive increase. And so you might consider it to be very practical and helpful to drop down to maintenance and kind of see where your calories settle there. And then use that number to inform your first calorie drop when you transition to a cut. So there might be some practical benefits that make the process a little bit more predictable. But in terms of physiological benefits, I truly can't think of any. So it's a viable option, but I don't consider it to be a requirement or something that is necessary.